Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Rob, let's get clips 8 through 11 queued up and ready to go from Elbert Guillory. And I want to set that up. This is the story that I promised to bring you at the very beginning. Well, let me just close the loop on that human event story about Republicans with a much higher fertility rate. This is a serious problem for the Democrats that will catch up to them over time. Now, not every child of conservative parents turns out to be a conservative. I mean, that's not a guarantee by any stretch, but that's the odds. Statistically, numerically, that's going to happen the bulk of the time. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from it. Not an absolute promise, but still a general principle of life, and it works. It's true to life. So conservatives are just outbreeding liberals, and that's a huge problem for liberals, because they're just going to be more conservatives. You know, you get 10, 20 years down the road, they're just going to be outnumbered. And that's why they are so dedicated to amnesty. We are breeding our own voters. We are conceiving our own voters. They've got to import them. They're not producing them, so they've got to import them. So that's why they're so enamored with illegal aliens and amnesty for them, is they've got to find some way to get these people on the voter rolls to just maintain numerical parity with conservatives. And this article goes on. I won't take time to go through the whole details, but it talks about the fact that the more religiously affiliated a woman was, the more important faith was in the everyday life of a woman, the higher the fertility rate in general, and the higher intended fertility rate. So the more in touch a woman is with God and her family is with God, the more they are inclined to obey the direction of Genesis 1:28. So that's why liberals are pushing amnesty, is because we're outbreeding them, and this is a desperation move on their part to try to stay current. Now, here is where is that story? I got to find that story again. Yeah, here it is. And I want to set the stage for the sound bites from this Democratic politician, because he gets what I'm talking about. Elbert Guillory came across this piece in the Wall Street Journal on Friday by James Taranto, one of my favorite writers. Title of the piece is Pathological Altruism. Pathological altruism. Now, stay with me on this. That's kind of a big sounding term, but I want to explain it to you, because that phrase explains liberalism in America. It appears to be altruistic. Altruism is when you care about the other guy, when you're into serving the other guy and doing something nice for the other guy and helping out the other guy. That's altruism. Altruism is just a big word for loving your neighbor as yourself. So liberals say, look, that's what we're about. We are about altruism, because they will just beat us over the head and shoulders. We're the compassionate ones. We're the tolerant ones. We're the ones that care about the little people. You are mean. You're cold. You're cold-hearted. You have no compassion for people. You hate people. You want grandmas to get pushed off the cliffs in their wheelchairs. You want children to starve. You want grandma kicked out of the convalescent home to the curb. That's what you want. That's how they peg us. And they, on the other hand, peg themselves as the altruistic ones. We're the ones that care about other people. Now, there's research been released by Oakland University, a paper entitled Concepts and Implications of Altruism Bias and Pathological Altruism. Now, what this article is saying, that kind of altruism, the kind of altruism that the liberals pride themselves in, is pathological. It hurts the very people that they claim they are trying to help. And we've seen this over and over again with things like Obamacare. Remember, Obamacare was sold to us as the most altruistic program in the history of civilization. This is going to lower the cost of health care. This is going to put health care in the hands of every American, regardless of their income level. This is going to give everybody access to quality health care. And what are we finding? So it's supposed to be about the little guy. So what are we finding? Employers are reducing employees to part-time hours so they don't have to pay Obamacare. Who gets hurt? It's the little guy that gets hurt. Then we find out that employers can dodge the Obamacare tax if they offer a very expensive health care plan that their employees can't afford. They've satisfied their responsibility because they've offered insurance. It's so expensive that their employees are not going to be able to afford it, so they're going to have to go into the exchange. But if the employees make over a certain amount, they cannot qualify for any subsidies, so they won't be able to afford to buy insurance on the state exchanges or the federal exchanges. They will be aced out altogether. They will have no choice but to pay the fine because they will not be able to find insurance that they can't afford. Who gets hurt? It is the little guy. That is pathological altruism. So here's some excerpts from the paper. Oakley, this is the writer of the piece, Barbara Oakley. She's an associate professor at Oakland University, which is outside Rochester, Minnesota. Oakley defines pathological altruism as, quote, altruism in which attempts to promote the welfare of others instead result in unanticipated harm. So that's pathological altruism. It's an attempt that is intended or designed or advertised as being about the welfare of others. Instead, it results in harm. That's pathological altruism. James Toronto goes on, a crucial qualification is that while the altruistic actor fails to anticipate the harm, quote, an external observer would conclude that it was reasonably foreseeable. Now, that's what we were saying about Obamacare. Obamacare is one giant exercise in pathological altruism. It claims to be about helping the other guy. It's for the little guy. It's putting accessible health care in the hands of every American. It's altruistic. But you and I, we weren't fooled by this thing from day one. We could see that this was pathological. It was going to destroy the finest health care system in the world in the name of helping the little guy. There wasn't anything altruistic about it. It was entirely pathological. And the way that this author, Barbara Oakley, illustrates it, if you offer to help a friend move, that's altruism. Now, you might accidentally drop an item and break it. Now, that's not foreseeable. It's not pathological. You didn't intend to do it. You honestly set out to help this person. Nobody could foresee that you would have this kind of accident. But let's say, on the other hand, you've got a brother who is addicted to painkillers. He's got an addiction. He needs to break the addiction. Instead of helping him break the addiction, you help him get his pain meds. Now, you're helping him, so there's this kind of surface appearance of altruism, but it's pathological. You're doing him more harm than you are good. And she uses the illustration of codependent relationships where you might genuinely care for each other, but the empathy that you have for this other person leads you and leads them to do destructive things. Now, let me see if I can get to kind of the heart of this thing. Here's another example she gives of pathological altruism, and this is something that we have talked about before, and that was the housing crisis. Here's an excerpt from the paper. This pathological altruism produces bad public policy. Ostensibly well-meaning governmental policy, again, this business of providing mortgages to low-income Americans who couldn't afford them. They had a bad credit history. They didn't have a sufficient income stream. They weren't able to come up with an adequate down payment. Let's make sure we loan them money so they can experience the dream of American home ownership. That's altruistic. We want to help them get into a home, even though they can't afford it, and they shouldn't be given this loan. We're going to force banks to give loans. That's altruism, supposed to help the little guy. Ostensibly well-meaning governmental policy promoted home ownership, a beneficial goal that stabilizes families and communities. That's the altruism part. The government-sponsored enterprises, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, allowed less than qualified individuals to receive housing loans and encouraged more qualified borrowers to overextend themselves, all in the name of altruism. We're just here to help. Typical risk-reward considerations were marginalized because of implicit government support. In other words, what the government said to banks, We want you to issue these bad loans. We know these people don't have a down payment. We know their credit history is shot to pieces. We know that they don't have an income stream that can service the debt, but we want you to loan money to them anyway, and we will bail you out if things go bad. So the bank then has got nothing to lose. They can make these bad loans because they've got the promise from the government that taxpayers will bail them out. So they stopped using the typical risk-reward assessment that you do to decide whether a loan is a good idea or not. The government uses these agencies to promote social goals without acknowledging the risk or the cost. When economic conditions faltered, listen to this. This is why it's pathological. It looks like it's altruistic, but it is not. It hurts the people that they said they were out to help. When economic conditions faltered, many lost their homes or found themselves with properties worth far less than they originally had paid. Government policy then shifted the cost of this altruism to the public to pay off the too big to fail banks, then holding securitized subprime loans. That was what happened in 2008. That was the TARP thing. That was Bush. That's completely on Bush, 100% on Bush. I don't blame Obama for TARP. That's on Bush 100%. Altruistic intentions played a critical role in the development and unfolding of the housing bubble in the United States. So people wound up losing their homes out on the street because they took out a loan that they couldn't afford. And then people who overextended themselves, they wound up, when the bubble burst, they wound up with a home that's worth less than what they paid for it. So they actually got hurt. So here's a program supposed to help them. It just winds up hurting them. That is pathological altruism. And then last paragraph here, pathological altruism is at the root of the liberal left's crisis of authority. The left derives its sense of moral authority from the supposition that its intentions are altruistic and its opponents, that's us, are selfish. That sense of moral superiority makes it easy to justify immoral behavior like slandering critics of President Obama as racist or using the power of the Internal Revenue Service to suppress them. It seems entirely plausible that the Internal Revenue Service officials who targeted and harassed conservative groups thought they were doing their patriotic duty. If so, what a perfect example of pathological altruism. Focal Point AFR Talk, back with your calls and more. Stay with us.